Yeah, I'm just sitting on the ground. To most people, this would be impossible because they would find it improper. And now, of course, in winter, they would find it below their standards. Well, at the moment, this is a bit tilted, the table, because the legs are still drying. I collected wood from the forest. And I am about to turn it into a reality. But this table has been made from doors, from cupboards that I have in this kitchen, which I just put together from stuff that I had and stuff that I found, or stuff that was given to me. And now I find myself in a position where I do these Mad Hatter talks, and I am fully aware that people say that, the Mad Hatter is crazy or something. While everybody does exactly the same in their own way. So what the Mad Hatter stands for, to me, is actually a symbol for hard and honest work. Because what did the Red Queen do? She just sat around and bossed others around. And people even helped her to do this. Now, what is the Mad Hatter? In the story of Alice in Wonderland, well, to me, he's clearly some kind of a genius. And I have read the book, of course, but I'm also feeling my way forward. I feel like I rather want to sit here right now and just film myself sitting like this, because I sometimes do. And you could say this is cold now. But in relation to what? If you feel hot yourself, also because of the way you eat, it's winter, then maybe add some black pepper, maybe make a chili. Instead of just eating the same food over and over again, you could simply say, hey, I'll just make an effort and figure out what spices turn up the heat. So I work with food, and then I work with states of consciousness, and then I work with myself, and I strengthen myself. And when I feel like, because I've been sitting like this too many times, I may as well switch and just adapt to my needs in an active kind of a way. And I realize that this is clearly more exhausting, or so it seems. But if it keeps you erect and alive and awake, then that's what you should want as a human being. But now I still prefer, because sometimes you just also need to rest. Because everything seems so heavy. Now, this is a completely different state of mind. This is leaning back and letting your surroundings support you. This is I'm doing it myself. Because this is tough stuff. And if politicians would sit like this, they would hardly gossip. Because then they would be true, and their energy would be flowing, and their root chakra would no longer be blocked, which is why they could stop with their warmongering. But because they sit in the softest chairs they can find and look for support in the people that follow them, because they don't actually support themselves, right? If they would, then they would just start to rise, just do their job in the community where they find themselves in. And then the people would realize, oh wow, you know, I can lean on that guy. And then people would start leaning on that guy, and then, you know, maybe the state would realize it and shut you down. If they managed. So you have to have your intentions right. And that's what really inspired me to do this video about, you know, understanding Gandhi's vision, which is in the Working with Books section. And Gandhi's vision is basically about non-participation. And that's then what some people call civil disobedience. But the word civil also has, you know, it's like every word, there are so many meanings to it. We talk about civil rights, and you talk about civil war. We talk about civilians. But civil also has something negative to it. Like the word itself implies, or am I confusing it with severe? Seville. I don't know, to me it has something, like that's how they treat us. You get what I'm saying? They're treating us like we're the rogue bad child. But I'm not the rogue bad child. I'm the one who stands up for nature and says, hey, let's stop with all of this overproduction. You know, let's just go as individuals into the forest and just collect our own berries that are then absolutely organic. And then you say that to people and they chuckle at you, they laugh at you like, and that's the only thing they have. Their condescension. Because you know what it's like to be alone, to have no one back you up, but possibly nature or your own intuition. You know what it's like if you go to people and you leave them and you know they're like, they don't take you seriously. They think you're just gonna, you know, he's never gonna last. That's the stuff they whisper into the darkness. But they cannot say it directly to you. Well, guess what, my friend? I have lived in darkness. I know darkness, yeah? And that's how I can distinguish the light. That's how I can say that's the difference. And I can see it. I mean, I have watched Charlie Chaplin in an interview towards the end of his life. And what you see is that he was absolutely phony. He just wanted to be rich. And that's how he ended his life, as a fat, disgusting old man that just saw a way to get wealthy. And when he was wealthy, you never heard of him again. Until they interviewed him in his family home and you realize everything he says is a bloody lie. I mean, you can see who he is. Disgusting old man. You can see it. For if he would have had what he tried to portray when he was trying to portray it, he would have never allowed it to get to his head, but he did. And in the end, he was just a lonely, fat old man sitting in a chair. And that makes everything he ever did a lie. And that's really hard to digest. They say, no, it cannot be. Yeah, because you've got the wrong image. You just see this guy, how he's doing his little tricks. But have you ever heard him talk? He called himself the King of New York. Like, it got to his head. The people got to him. Which is why he didn't have something. He wanted to have something. And when he had it, he simply stopped. Because now he had the money. Well, materialism quieted him down. But there are certain people who you can hear talk about certain subjects. Like, if you look at this, the dictator's speech, and you hear what he's trying to portray, and you hear the words that he's saying, but you hear the energy that is vibrating through him, and you realize he's not serious about this. He doesn't really feel that. He's laughing about it. He's laughing about this. You know, it's not honest, because what he calls good, you know, is all this television and stuff. And I actually call that a distraction. So he never got through to anything. He just thought of a way how he could get rich. And he got rich. And that's what he wanted. So he didn't want to be communal. He didn't care about anything, about spiritual wealth or whatever. No, he just wanted to have the money. And when he had the money, he just created himself some thing. He just lived in a house, and that was it. So the only thing you can get from what he did is to just do it yourself. But if he would have been honest about, I like to move, I like to do these things, then they could have never, you know, he just showed that, you know, I'm corrupt. You know, I was phony, man, I'm just a salesman. If he were honest, he'd say that. What do you want from me? You know, I'm just a salesman. I just put up an act and people sucked up to it. You know, it made them laugh. I had a good time. You know, now I'm rich and I still hate my life. That's what he would say. Because I just sit around and I cannot do shit because I'm fat and old and disgusting. And I never did my sadhana. So what do you want, you know? I'm a living nightmare. That's what he would have said. And I'm as phony as they come. You know, that would be an honest. But he doesn't say that with words. But he says it just by sitting there like a fat little maggot in his aristocratic home. And now the question is, of course, you know, should I release this? Well, it's hard to say. It feels a bit overly judgmental. But, you know, one thing about the mad thing is simply taking the image of somebody that everybody seems to worship and then just looking at what he really did. What did he really do? Like, honestly, what did he really do? And what does any one of us really ever do? You know, that's a very valid point. You know, what does any one of us ever really do that is so important, or that is more important than, let's say, nature just providing, just like that, just providing, here, take it. And then what do? You know, you just build whatever you do on what something else has created, and then you say, oh wow, look at what I've done. You know? That's then people like Chris Webby or NF, you know, acting like they're like self-made men. I think you are lacking respect, my friend. Nobody is a self-made man. Because everyone who gave you something helped you to get where you are today. So I'm just getting sick of people portraying them as something that they're clearly not. And then projecting all their bad parts, just projecting it onto other people. Let's just act like, hey, this Christopher, he looks a bit crazy, Let's just get into his head and really make him lose it, Let's just project all of our shortcomings onto him. And then we can just point him out and say, hey, look at him. He's the bad guy. We never do anything bad. Yeah, you just did, man. Because you just projected onto me. And I'm just sitting here. I'm just doing my bit. I'm pointing out liars because it's obvious that they're liars. It's just that people have forgot. Because they're living in a trench that they dug themselves, by being lazy, by using too many gimmicks, right? By giving up the responsibility to phony people in the belief that money means anything. And that's a point, like a very, very valid point that you can make. But in any case, it's always dangerous to give your opinion to one thing or another. And if I just point out certain truth, then my own mission may be in jeopardy, which is then being judged for what I've just said. Well, there are things that people say that are way worse than what I'm doing. Because I'm not denying, like Charlie Chaplin, the right to live. I'm just questioning his motives to do anything. And so, yeah, I can hear truth because I can read expressions in people's faces and I can hear the intent with which what they, what they said was being fueled. Like, I can see where you want to get with what you're doing right now. And then people just say, yeah, not with me, pal. So there's always this people looking for some kind of like a horror thing, Somebody comes and he says something and then one guy comes and he's, And then they just try to point you out and you're like, what are you talking about, man? Like, what's with the hysteria? And that's the worst part about this game of things that we're playing here. Everybody tries to be something, but you should just stop trying to be the biggest idiot, the most unconscious prick there is. And maybe just take responsibility, because from your unconscious slumber have arisen so many terrible deeds, that pose consequences for your children and your children's children, and you just sit there and smirk about it. Which is why, how can you worship a guy that just turned out to be a fat old lazy man? That just managed to put on a smile for a performance, but that never felt the smile. That just somebody who just practiced it in front of a mirror until it looks almost convincing. A real smile cannot be like, now you're gonna smile. No, a real smile breaks out of you when you're honest and open. And just because you look different and you know what you're talking about, people are just gonna say you're crazy, so they don't have to change because they're lazy. And that's what has happened, to truth ever since these so-called monarchs or aristocrats started taking over, because they think they can get away with being phony and acting like they've got something. Well, they forget that they were given it by the people. And if they weren't given it, then they started to force them into giving it by trying to keep them down there in the slums. That's what you have to do as an aristocrat. You have to keep people down in the gutter. And pretend like you've got something that they want. Well, you know, they got it from you. Now you talk about these things, people say you're mad, and then you realize, well, they don't say I'm mad because I'm mad. They say I'm mad because what I say scares them. You know, it scares them that I'm saying it because they kind of feel into what it would mean to openly talk about such topics. You know, and how you would feel, you know. That's why people say other people are mad. You know, mad can be something to be marveled at without being called something bad. You know, there's a lot of respect also. If you can be mad, but simply keep on doing your job. I mean, I'm not mad. I know exactly what I'm doing. The Mad Hatter is just something, you know, the Mad Hatter is like the fool. Who calls the fool a fool? It's an idiot who calls the fool a fool. Only the fool thinks the fool is a fool. Because the fool is the bravest guy in the room, because he speaks the truth that nobody dares to say out loud. You know, and then they try to portray him, they try to mock him, but they always know the truth is there. And then they try to shame the fool, right? They try to show the fool its place and keep it in the gutter, but you're still the fool. Because you're running away from truth. If you'd be truthful, the fool would never get to you. And then the fool isn't the fool, he's the jester, he's the trickster, he's the prankster, he's the Mad Hatter that stands in front of the queen and giggles because he sees through the masquerade. And that's in the movie Embrace of the Serpent, you know, that's the shaman that sits in the back of the boat and giggles, you know, because this so-called civilized guy is writing a love letter to his woman, and he says, what are you writing letters to a woman for? He just laughs about it because he can see. Plus he's having conversations in his mind, you know, with his whole ancestral line, you know, they're all there. They're all making fun of the idiot who tries to connect with a woman by writing letters, while he knows that the only way to really connect with a woman is simply by being with her and then merging into one another. There's no point in writing letters. And that's what I feel. I have tried. It doesn't work. It's just a symptom of fear. You should just let go. Because you're writing letters to someone who cannot help you and who you may never see again. So in a sense, it is better to live your life like a vagabond or some kind of a lonely traveler, and then just to see along the way what's gonna stick. I mean, you're gonna know if there's a woman that wants to stay with you, but you cannot force her. She has to come by herself. And when she comes by herself, you know, then she's probably gonna stay. And that's the only thing you can then do. I mean, there's no point in forcing anyone. Now I'm going out of my way to record this, and I'm simply trying to express to you that I'm playing chess in my mind. And I'm playing chess so well that I can checkmate almost anyone, simply because they know that I am willing to speak truth. And if I speak truth to you, then you have to, then you will hear it. And once you've heard it, you can keep pretending that you didn't hear it, but in these silent, dark moments of your life, where you just turned off the TV and you're sitting there and you're waiting to go to bed, you're gonna hear it reverberating through yourself. Everything I've said. And then you either start picking up work, you do your sadhana, you figure out what you do, maybe you reduce sugar and coffee, whatever, but you're gonna hear it, you're gonna feel it. And if it's not my voice, then it's gonna be someone else's voice. And so I believe that my contents are something that simply are supposed to guide people to the next phase of their lives. Because what I do is I take apart concepts. Everything you've been trained, everything you've been conditioned to think, every word, can be taken apart, it can be undone. And I have undone mine to a large degree, to the point where, if somebody tells you somebody died, you just start to smile. And then they'll say, "Why are you smiling?" Because they think they ought to be angry about it. And then you say, "Because death is part of life, and that's all there is to it. I'm not gonna hug you because your father died. I'm not even gonna hug you when your entire family died. I'm gonna tell you to pick yourself up and keep on going. And if you cannot do that, well, then you may follow them in due time." So what we need is strong souls that can survive on their own emotionally. All the financial stuff, okay, that's something else. But I believe that the emotional stuff, the responsibility for yourself, that's your job. Sure, and if you go tell that to people and they just say, "Well, yeah, he also walks barefoot in the winter, that guy's crazy." And what does it really mean then? What does it really mean if crazy people call you crazy? Because in the end, they lost it. They smell like perfume. They stare into the mirror a half an hour a day, right? You just wake up the way you slept, maybe rinse your face and leave. And they stand in front of the mirror, think, it's them that they see. No, it's just a leech. It's just some kind of demonic representation of yourself. And you only show yourself from your bright side. You look into the mirror and you're like, oh yeah, I'm so pretty. Ah. Yeah, and you flatter yourself into being nice. And then you run around and you're just wicked. Just wicked, really wicked. And I'm happy if I no longer have to see you. So yeah, in a way, I'm looking for times where, you can just leave and be gone. Leave and just live somewhere else. And nobody can reach you or send you messages. But sure, in a certain sense, I'm choosing this life by myself. But I also choose to put the phone on flight mode at certain times. When I feel like I've had enough, right? And it's never really what you want, whatever you get, right? It's never really what you want. It's just what it turned out to be. So it's better to have like a loose vision of the future and just see how it will manifest. Because maybe there will be things you may never get, but it's nice to imagine them. Because it also has to do with the times you are living in and the things you feel like you need to do. And then maybe really living in a commune is something for the future. That's really hard to say. You can prepare yourself all you want, but in the end, your life is going to show you, what you got to do. And then you simply have to pick yourself up and do something. So I realized I was, something started to weigh. I said, I'm just going to continue with YouTube. And I'm going to do no intros. And I'm simply going to use this to keep pushing my boundaries. So now I've got these 2 videos of the week already in the bag, which is nice. And now I can simply see, how to move ahead. It's one meal to the next. It's a day for a day. You survive today, so you push your boundaries a little bit every day. So you can, keep on going. And sitting like this means you have to keep paying attention, and you have to keep pushing your boundaries. So in winter, when it starts to get cold, you have to know how to stay warm. So yeah, if I wear a jacket inside, I save on heating, and this is time and money. For money is time, right? And time can be transformed into money. So I rather try to earn a living with something that keeps me erect and keeps me strong. And then to simply see where it's going to get you. Well, this I could do. I like sitting on the cold, but I don't feel cold. I actually feel warm. But I also just ate food with spices and pepper, right? Yeah, and so it is always a challenge to see what you want, to see what you need, to keep building a life. Posting on the internet is also something that can be a bit depressing because it's so disconnected. So you just have to figure out how to stay connected in yourself. Because if you lose the connection of your heart, then you're just gonna be like Charlie Chaplin. I think he wanted to bring change to the people. Maybe that was how he started. But then everybody just gave him money. But it feels like he was just empty. Because otherwise, he would have never become fat. He should have continued. But maybe it was also a bit extreme how he started. He should have slowed down at some point and just kept on pushing, but he stopped. And that's one of the boundaries one has to overcome, that let's say I live like this now and suddenly I get a lot of money. Then what I have to do is I have to, I cannot let the money then direct my life and just start buying stuff. It's probably better to keep living in the same small apartment, just like this, with the cold floor in winter. Just sit on the hard ground, sleep on the floor with just like a thin mattress, keep on pushing it, keep on buying, like the cheap food. Just eat what everybody else eats. Live a bit like a vagabond that just happens to have an apartment, but that could be like a cave that you found somewhere in nature, right? And that's, I believe, what's the better way. But you still have to protect yourself, because people will figure out that you may have something and then they will try to steal from you. It's not just money that they may steal, but time, and time is important. Because if they steal your time, then you're gonna miss time, let's say, to spend with your beautiful wife that you may have. and may hold very precious. But you also have to have happiness by yourself. Otherwise, you're just gonna suck dry your wife. You should have this for yourself, because if you don't have it and you turn out into this disgusting old man because you just take everyone for granted and you think you've done something, what did Charlie Chaplin really do? Nothing. He did nothing. Yeah? And he never lasted. He crawled away back into the hole that he came out of. So the idea is you keep doing this for a very long time. And then you see. And maybe it's not the time to flee into nature and start a commune. Maybe it's the time to start a commune in the city. It is possible, Just start where you're living. My family, so-called family, didn't want this. Neither do the people where I live here. They have no interest in community. They just protect their own space, and look for victims. Well, that's their mentality. Mine is a bit different. So this is basically what I'm doing in my podcast. Only in my podcast I can stretch out the boundaries even more. Because this is, and that's just what I know, a censored platform that only allows certain truth. So it's just censored. But I can still say that I simply focus on healing myself, that I take responsibility for my own well-being, and nobody can say that that is wrong. Because I have no interest in phony people, right? Taking care of myself. Because I know myself way better. And that already for people is crazy. Because most people are afraid, right? That's like Judge Dredd. You have to leave the city and go for the long walk. Well, maybe that's where I am. So the only direction I see for me is nature. I'm just biding my time. Because people who are in cities, they cling to cities. I don't want to die in a city, I want to die in nature. And for that I have to work hard. Because I first want to live in it. And for that I need time. So you have to pay one way or another. And that's just what I found. Okay, I have the feeling... Okay, that's the good question. Because I wanted to do cooking videos. The question is, now that I started with recording YouTube, I feel like pushing it. Now I just have to ask myself how fast I want to go through with it. I think I'm just going to tell you. I'm probably going to make myself a matcha latte. Or I'm going to keep that for later. It's really hard to say. Probably have to eat some meat at some point. Not today, but I may defrost it. Now I also have to see, I still have soup. So it's about householding. Okay, this recording is over. certain things have to be kept to yourself. If you want to know how to make a matcha latte, then you make a matcha latte. It's just green tea powder. I don't know if that is matcha. I think it's not. It's just green tea powder. And you mix it, and then you turn it into a drink. You know, on the inside I feel so sad. You know, and then you take the drink. You see, this is so terrible, man. I feel like doing something, but then I don't want to give more than I have to. And then I feel like, yeah, but no, this is the Mad Hatter thing now. But then I still have this other food. I have this pumpkin, spaghetti pumpkin. Damn it, this is sometimes so difficult. What is he talking about? What is so difficult? Well, sometimes it's just so difficult. So difficult, I'm telling you. But what? Christopher, please tell us. Sometimes it's just really difficult to do what you feel like you wanted to do. Because now I have to pee, now I have to do this, and now I have to do that. Yeah, and your neighbors, they don't want you to cook with gas because they're afraid. And then you say, yeah, but your fear shouldn't stop me from realizing my own life. Poo-poo. And then you just don't understand. And everything is so hard. And you just don't know. You know, what's the bloody part that I wanted to play? Just a second. Yeah, I just needed to use the restroom. Just didn't want to tell you. Okay, now I'm gonna make some kind of a matcha. This is just gonna lift me up a little. But I also feel a bit that I work too much with all these spices and stuff. Okay, this is like a bit like garam masala. Cinnamon, cloves, piment, nutmeg, coriander, cardamom, ginger, and nutmeg flour. Yeah. I mean, I often have not really judged people, but seen, you know, their strength. But sometimes you have to just focus on people's strength instead of their weaknesses. But yeah, I mean, some people's weaknesses are just so plain. Okay. Now I just have this green tea powder that you're supposed to store in the fridge. Not sure if that is matcha. It just says green tea powder. It's not super expensive, it was just what they had available. €3.89. So I'm not gonna tell the guy who I bought it from that I think it's nice, right? Because then he is going to ask more money for it. Okay, just one. No, this is not probably how it's prescribed. It's just what I do with it. Yeah, I'm just gonna do the whole thing because it's quite strong. I had it before that I found it quite strong. And I don't want it too strong now, because otherwise it's just gonna knock me out again. You know, just like a really bitter tea can knock you out. So you can go into the vortex now. If you focus on it, it's a form of meditation, cooking. So I didn't have to show you this. You realize that, right? I didn't. I showed you anyway. Now you have to get used to it. Yeah. I just want a bit more of this. It's just the same that I used before. It's from a local, like a couple that sells spices. But I have the feeling they don't know what to do with them because they're really obese. Just don't get that. Can you sell something and be completely ignorant of how to use it? Okay. Sometimes you can test it. So as a man, you should be careful if neighbors also like Moroccan or... I mean, you have to learn the meaning behind people's actions, you know? Like, let's say you have some Arabian neighbors and they start to show an interest to you. Like, let's say the mother starts being really friendly to you. You have to realize how this works. You know, if they have daughters, or their other family members may have daughters, they're not just gonna invite you just because they're nice. They're gonna invite you because they want to marry you off to one of their daughters. And that's a fact. So if you spend time with people, you know, it's better to see it like a contract. And then you have to ask yourself, okay, does this connection does it bring me closer to myself or further away from myself? So yeah, this is just some well-earned advice. You know, I realized it, and because I have already chosen my wife, you know, disregarding of the things I have said here, I'm just working with emotions. Right? And I can transform the way I feel about my wife simply by talking about her and then readjusting the perspective I have. Because now I have said it out loud. that's why having and maintaining a podcast can be seen as self-therapy in a way, because you simply do your own work. You know, you reflect on the way you feel. And now I'm going to show you something else, which I have already done. But because it's also about Mad Hatter, you know, to working, to learning, you know, to get to know yourself and your own madness, which is simply, you know what your madness is. It's the injuries you have received throughout your life. These are your pressure points. Wow, I've never said it like this. What a great moment. You know, these are the injuries you have received, which is why healing is facing your inner madness, because the madness is all the chaos, the unknown in yourself, the stuff you've buried. Yeah. And you simply have to learn to focus on the light, because the madness is always there. I could do mad things all the time, right? But I'm just doing what I find. I don't know. So you take a banana, take some cocoa powder, and then you may add some, just gonna do it now, nutmeg. It's just this little piece that's left. Right, and then you just do this. Okay, well, now it's getting hot enough. So I don't actually think there's all this caffeine stuff in green tea. I think it's just the bitter. Because if you drink something really bitter, you're really awake. Which is why ayahuasca is really bitter. I think it's just that you get sleepy if you're living a life that's out of balance. So you just have to realize what you're lacking. I don't know, man. It's just that I feel like I have been lacking meat at some times. And once I started eating it again, I did feel better. But then I had to work with the emotions I felt while eating it and the way I judged it. But there is something that bone marrow has that I feel like you need. But that's just what you have to work with. You know, I like my shadow. I'm not afraid of my shadow. I rather embrace my shadow and then lead a life worth living than to run away from it. Okay, and then you just mix it. So you take a proper amount of cocoa powder and then whatever spice you want. And then maybe you could even turn this into power balls. Well, for that you probably need coconut fat and then cocoa powder. And then you could probably turn this into power balls. And then add the right kind of spices. Okay. And now I'm ready. This goes into the thermos because it's winter. So I like to work with Okay, that's it. Put on the lid. And then keep it, drink it, do something. Stay active. Such are then the gifts of nature or something, right?